Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I want to dive into 8 lessons from my 2023 fat loss phase, which is my most previous fat loss phase. I thought this would be some good lessons for you to take and apply to your fat loss phase. But first, before I do that, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this information. So if it's been helpful to you in any way, or you think somebody would greatly benefit from this, please rate and review. And again, more people will be able to find it and whatnot. Next, I have my free masterclass on body recomp, what it is, how to do it. The link to that is in the show notes. So once you watch that, you'll really have all the tools you'll need to have a body recomp and know what it is, if you can do it, and whatnot. I also have my free masterclass on nutrition periodization. I go over each nutrition phase, what it is, how long they should be, how to set it up, adjustments, common mistakes, dive into it all. So again, if you're interested in that, and again, I'll probably talk about it a few times throughout this podcast episode today. The link to that is in the show notes as well. And then lastly, if you found this podcast, or you could just tell I have this in my head. I do this 2 times a week. But if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. And that's where I'm most active on social media. If you ever have any questions on anything, you can just reach out to me there. And if I say something on this podcast and you're just like, I don't really know what you mean, or I don't agree, you can always shoot me a message on there as well too. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's episode. And again, I want to talk about 8 lessons from my 2023 fat loss phase. Real quick, I'm going to share my screen. So I believe people on YouTube will be able to see this. So you can always look at it on YouTube if you want, but I just want to show my fat loss progress from this last training cycle, or from this last fat loss phase, which was at the end of 2023. So again, went from 168.5 to about 153.5 for my weekly average, and about 13.5 weeks there with that, right? So you can see that if you are watching on YouTube. Hopefully, I hope you can see it there with that. Anyways, so just want to share that with you real quick. This fat loss phase happened a while back. We're in June now. By the time this is released, it'll be July 2024. This was back in like August, September of 2023. And it was a fat loss phase where I wanted to get lean for my wedding. Before this, I was in a building phase, gained up to about 168.5 or so leading up to it. And it was just time to do a fat loss phase at that point. And it just coincided with the wedding and then obviously the honeymoon after as well too. I went up in this fat loss phase till about October. So I guess that means I started like maybe late July. But again, I gave myself about a month before the wedding because I didn't want to end this fat loss phase and then go straight into the wedding, right? Because then you're like depleted, you just look skinny. I wanted to actually fill out my tuxedo as well too. And again, for the trip, I wanted to make sure that I was not going in super hungry, and would have been really hard to moderate my food intake there. So again, I wanted to basically get down to this low weight, and then I wanted to maintain around that weight leading up to the wedding and just fill out with that. So that's the background of it. And so what I want to do today is just go over some lessons from this fat loss phase. I think it's always good to reevaluate. And again, I think you can take away some things from this that you can apply to your fat loss phase. So I went over the overview. All right, so let's dive into, I guess, one more thing before I get into this. Again, so I talked about a building phase. I talked about a fat loss phase. Again, if you're like interested in this and okay, how do you plan this out? What does this look like? That free masterclass on nutrition periodization is for you. So definitely go and check that out, because you'll be able to learn really everything you need to about nutrition periodization and how to run out, or how to run it for you moving forward. All right. So my first lesson from this one specifically, and this is something that I've been utilizing more lately. And again, it's always been around, but I feel like I can see the benefits more of it now, and what we can use it for than in the past, versus thinking that it's some magic, right? And that's diet breaks / refeeds are a great tool. So I implemented more diet breaks and refeed days this time around. So I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure there was a week in there where something was going on, and I was, hey, this is going to be a diet break week. And then also I had like my bachelor party. We had other like showers and other events leading up to this, to where I would use some refeed days as well too. And again, just keep in mind, diet breaks and refeeds won't magically speed up fat loss, but they can be great from a mental standpoint, training perspective, and look as you diet down. So real quick, if we're not familiar with this concept, diet breaks are basically 1 to 2 weeks or longer at your maintenance calories, right? And then refeed days are 1, 2, 3, 4 days at, say, a higher caloric intake, again, closer to your maintenance with that, right? And again, the goal there is to get more calories in, right? You're in a deficit and it's there to get more calories. And these can be in the research, they've people that have and they've shown when they've had studies that have looked at either continuously dieting or taking diet breaks, refeeds. They didn't see any more fat loss, right? It didn't speed up fat loss or anything like that. However, it did help with the mental side of things, right? People just showed less diet fatigue. They would do not polls, but I can't think of the word right now. At the end of these, they would have people fill out a form and let them know how they felt at the end of this. And again, from a mental standpoint, it seems to help. However, we can also take, and I think in one study in particular, they did look at training and they were able to complete a little bit more volume when they were at a diet break, right? So again, from a training perspective, it can be helpful. And then for your look as you diet down, I think having these days where you are at maintenance can be helpful from a lean body mass perspective, right? Because again, if you have this extended period of time in a deficit, yes, that's going to be great from fat loss. But as you do that for long periods of time, it can impact your lean body mass and you're more likely to lose a little bit more muscle, right? And so I think this can also help your look as you diet down. And I think it does multiple things. One, I think it helps you spend some time at maintenance to where it's okay, your body feels good. It doesn't feel like it needs to potentially use muscle if it needs to, right? Obviously, if we get enough sleep, we eat enough protein, we weight train, our risk of losing muscle is very low. However, again, it can still, if you're super lean, and there's probably going to be some tiny little bit loss of lean body mass in most cases, but we obviously want to try to limit that as much as possible with that. But you also are able to fill out. I mentioned that you fat loss diet, you're depleted. And so by doing this, you're able to fill back out a little bit. And that kind of helps you just have this fuller look. So I think it can be helpful from that standpoint there with that. Thought of them more as like deloads, just like we would take a deload. If you have a ton of fatigue, taking a deload can drop that fatigue. I thought of these as the same as well too, where we were able to take off some fatigue mentally and physically. And just like that helps deload from training helps with those things, it can be helpful. I think it can be helpful from a food perspective, right? It just takes some stress off of it. And again, if you're feeling some fatigue, this is where I would start some diet fatigue. I would start to potentially implement these. So I think really what this did for me, this made me want to implement these more for myself, especially as I got leaner, as I dropped down, and just with clients in general, especially if you have events, you have stuff going on, and you just might, for you, it'd be beneficial to just take these from a mental standpoint, right? You just feel better where you have a day where you can eat a little bit more. Again, it's going to help with training. It's going to help with energy. Maybe it gives you that little tiny break from fat loss dieting where you're like, hey, now I can keep going with this, right? I can keep pushing myself. I'm more likely to want to stay on it. Whereas if you're just continuously diet, it can start to weigh on you. You might feel hungrier and it's harder for you to stay on track. And then what ends up happening is somebody will end up just going off because they're just sick of dieting. And then that leads to issues where not only are they going to hurt their fat loss ability, but they also may gain weight that they don't want to. So again, I think this would be a proactive approach to making sure that doesn't happen. In saying this, they're not for everybody. For some people, having these days closer to maintenance means that they're more likely to go way over. Mentally, because they have a little bit more flexibility, they just go way over. So again, know yourself. If you're in a good like rhythm, routine, things are going well, you're feeling good overall, I don't think you have to have these, but they can be helpful for all the reasons that I talked about. And then obviously as you get leaner, I think they can be super helpful again from a mental standpoint, but also from a physique standpoint. I think it can really help you maintain lean body mass and just have a fuller look. And again, just help you stick with it as you dig deep essentially there with that. So again, diet breaks and refeeds are a great tool and something that we can utilize for sure, and something that I'm more likely to have a client use now and be proactive on it. Again, you can take a proactive approach to these. You can take a reactive approach. A proactive approach is, hey, every X amount of time, I'm going to take it, whether that be weekly, every other day. I wouldn't do every other day. That's probably a bit excessive. Then your other days would be really low. So again, you need to look at that. But again, it can be like every 2 weeks, I'm taking one, whatever it is. You can be proactive and have that set up, or you can be reactive and, hey, I'm really feeling it. I feel like I really need one. Then we can take a reactive one as well. There's no right or wrong approach. Again, just knowing yourself and how you how you feel like you would react to these is going to be most important. Again, could also be a trial and error thing here where you try it out as well too, right? Lesson number 2, keeping things as similar as you can from day to day. You don't have to eat the same exact thing every single day, right? Yeah, somebody can take that from that and be like, okay, so I need to eat the same thing every day. You don't necessarily need to do that. And I could argue that if you eat the same exact things day after day for extended periods of time, we might be missing out on certain uh, micronutrients. You may start to develop some kind of intolerances to certain foods. So you do want to be careful with having the same thing every single day. That's definitely something that, I mean, it's going to make things a lot more manageable at that standpoint. So because there's going to be that less variability from day to day, you're really going to be able to, you know what you need to do. That takes away a lot of the thought process. Boom. And you can just like checking boxes at that point. But like I said, there's some potential issues with it. And saying this, again, I don't think you necessarily need to have the exact same foods every single day, every single meal. But I think the more that you can keep things similar from day to day, the better off you're going to be with that, right? So some examples would be eating 1 to 2 meals that are the same every day. So again, it's not necessarily, let's say you eat 3 to 4 meals. Okay, you don't necessarily have to eat the same exact meals all the time, but maybe 1 or 2 of those are the same, right? Again, that makes it easy. You have that baseline, you know what to expect. And then from there, it's now we have a good amount of structure in, and we can go from there versus just every single day, things are completely different. That's if you can do that, it just can potentially make things challenging. So again, is it maybe just having 1 to 2 meals that are the same? It could also be eating the same amount of meals per day. So maybe you're someone that like having the same 1 to 2 meals a day, and I'm going to do the same amount of meals per day. Boom. Now it's like you have 4 meals, 2 of them, 1 to 2 are the same. And then again, now you have meal 3 and 4 that maybe it's a little bit different. You're going to track your calories and macros in that. But again, you have a lot of structure versus again, it's one day you eat different foods every single day. One day you eat 2 meals, the next day you eat 4. It's like there's too much change from day to day that it's just going to be really hard to get things dialed in. Yes, again, you can track your calories and macros that way, but you're just making things more challenging and you're leaving things up to chance a little bit more by doing that. Another way you could keep things similar is having a rotation of meals that you use. So again, maybe it's a rotation of 3 to 5 meals, and at any one time you're doing 2 of those or 3 of them, and then you're switching them out. Another way to keep things similar is you're going grocery shopping on the same day of the week. Again, you have that when you need to go to the grocery store, you know what you need to get, and it's just like clockwork there with that. So again, as many of these things as we can keep consistent as possible is really going to go a long way here in a fat loss phase. And so that's my main takeaway is trying to keep things as similar as possible. Again, you can go as far as the extreme as every single meal is the same, but we don't necessarily need to go there. It can just be more of, hey, I'm going to eat the same amount of meals per day, and 1 to 2 of those are going to be the same each day. And then I'm going to vary up kind of my meals the last 2 meals of the day. But again, time and time again from clients I talk to, ones that are proactive in tracking, ones that are proactive in planning out, they just have a much easier time dropping body fat, right? There's less kind of noise there with that. And we're leaving less things up to chance, essentially. Number 3, have a general idea for when you'll stop. Again, I used to think you needed an exact stop date. And again, this may be more helpful if there's like a vacation or event you need to be ready for. So again, for my example, a wedding. However, I think it's better to have a range of dates to stop versus an exact date. Because the reason being, if things are going well, like why would you stop? Or if they aren't going well, why keep pushing? So again, we can look at it on both sides there. It's okay, if things are going well, why would you stop? Keep going if you want. If you want to drop more body fat, you're feeling good, things are going well, keep going. But at the same time, if things aren't going well, like, oh, I said I'm stopping on October 5th. Again, if things aren't going well and whatnot, maybe it's best if we stop this fat loss phase. So again, have a general idea for when you want to end it, but keep that open, right? I think keep it open a little bit if you need to with that, right? So again, you have that date and then plus or minus whatever you're comfortable with, 2 to 4 weeks plus or minus. That's when you'll stop. For me, it was, hey, I'm probably going to stop sometime in October. And I ended up falling on early in October just because, again, I was like, I'm done with this. I don't really want to do it anymore. I feel as lean as I need to feel. Now I'm ready to get back to normal eating. So that's how you would manage that potentially. Number 4, lesson 4 is training sucks compared to maintenance and building muscle. Again, you still need to train hard to maintain your muscle, but training just feels tougher and there's less motivation overall. You just don't have as much food as you normally do. So once you eat at maintenance or a surplus for a while and you go to a deficit, you really notice how different you can feel with that. So again, training is just so much better at maintenance. Calories are higher. So again, that's just my lesson there, that understand training is not going to feel as good. It's going to be harder to progress, but you still need to train hard to make sure you maintain muscle. Don't go into it being like, training is going to suck, so I'm just going to wing it. Again, that's probably going to lead to some muscle loss because you're not really pushing yourself. Lesson 5, make sure you track data. Don't just weigh in randomly every few days and then judge what you do based on that and think that's enough data to track. So that's, what I'll commonly see, right? People here track data. Okay, well, I'm going to track my scale weight. And then and then they just do that randomly. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, my weight's up a little bit. I need to make an adjustment, or, hey, this isn't working, right? That's just not enough information. And you need to also be consistent with weighing in. So again, weigh in, but make sure you have a system with it. And again, we also want to track these things as well too. And again, these are just examples. You don't have to do this. Track your hunger, track your energy levels, track your training, make sure you track your steps, track progress pictures and measurements. Make sure, look at all those things and don't just look at scale weight, right? Again, I said measurements because again, like what I'll see happen here, especially when somebody comes to me and they haven't really been weight training as effectively as they could be. As they start to do that and they get other things dialed in, they're putting on muscle. And so it is masking some of their weight loss. So they're like, I haven't really lost weight. And in their mind, they feel like things aren't going well. But then you look and it's like measurements are completely different. Clothes are fitting way better. They're feeling better overall. It's like, okay, these are really good signs that, yeah, maybe you're not dropping weight as much as you like, but you are losing body fat. And that's ultimately what people want to do, right? Is yes, they want to lose weight. And again, people would benefit from losing weight, but ultimately people want to drop body fat. That's what's really going to move the needle there in terms of your look and everything like that. So again, make sure you're tracking other data than just besides random scale weight weigh-ins. Lesson 6, hunger is a good sign. If you aren't ever hungry or just eat when you feel hungry, fat loss is going to be tough to come by. Hunger is a good sign that fat loss is happening. So the cost of doing business, that's the best way I can explain it is, again, hunger is a good sign. Now, this doesn't mean you should be ravenously hungry 24/7 because you do want strategies in place to help mitigate hunger. And we want to have methods in place that help with hunger management, because if hunger is too high, and again, this is going to be different from person to person, but if hunger is too high, it's going to be really hard to stick to your fat loss diet, right? You're going to, it's just, you're going to have too many things pulling you away from it. But again, if you aren't okay with any amount of hunger, you're going to struggle. So like at the same time, we have to be okay with some hunger. And again, just realize that's the cost of doing business. Again, we want to watch it and make sure our hunger is not too high. But if you never have any, you're probably not losing body fat, unfortunately. So again, there is this like a little bit of, hey, you need to accept that you're going to have some hunger. And again, it is a good sign. Like to me, anytime I feel hungry, like in a fat loss phase, I'm like, this sucks. But the good news is, hey, in that energy deficit that I need to be in. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you just starve yourself and not eat, because that's obviously one way to increase your hunger. And that's not going to be great from a body comp perspective. But we do want to make sure that there's some hunger. We need to be okay with that. I see too many people that aren't ever okay with being hungry. They're not comfortable with that feeling. And anytime they feel that way, they want to go and eat food. And again, that's just going to hurt your fat loss progress, because that also is going to lead to, in my opinion, just random eating times. And that's, again, violates that second lesson here that I had, that we want to keep things consistent. Lesson number 7, going more than 0.75 to 1% of body weight per week just isn't feasible for most. At this point, at the time of doing this, I would consider myself a seasoned dieter. I still would. Like, I've dieted multiple times. I love learning about this stuff. I talked to multiple people on it. I've had multiple coaches. And I lost around 0.75% of body weight per week. And towards the end, training wasn't as great. Hunger was higher and everything just tasted amazing at that point, right? If we had something at the condo and it was there, I wanted to try it. Man, this freaking tastes good, or anything tasty. Or if we had events and I wanted something tasty, man, this just tastes so good. And so this all makes adherence very challenging. If you aren't a quote unquote seasoned dieter, to me, this makes things 100 times more challenging. So losing more per week is just going to be tough, right? Because all these things are just going to be amplified, right? So again, your hunger, the quicker you go, hunger is going to be higher. You're going to have lower energy. You're going to be, as you get further into it, you're going to be less likely to want to stick to things. So this just makes adherence very challenging. And I just find that if you go any quicker than this, it's just really hard to actually stick to over time, because you have all these things pulling you away from this and making it very challenging to stick to your nutrition plan. And going quicker than this will also risk lean body mass loss as well too. So this is why I think for most people, 0.75 to 1% of body weight loss per week is more than enough, and anything more than that, and it's going to be very hard to do for any amount of time, right? You're only going to be able to maybe do a couple weeks of that. So don't be afraid to go a little bit slower. Now, with this, most people have a hard time dropping body fat in general. So they don't need to actually be concerned about this. But in saying that, the reason they don't need to be concerned about it is because if they do this for a couple weeks, all these things pop up and it becomes very challenging. Again, there's a couple things there. One, people aren't great at dropping body fat, but if they are doing it quick, it's really hard to sustain after a couple weeks for the reasons that I just mentioned. Last lesson of the day, avoid grazing, or I'll just have one. As you lose more weight and get leaner, you will notice hunger and cravings pick up, making it nearly impossible to just have one. So just avoid it altogether and stick to your normal meal times and regular meals. Again, I can't stress this enough. As you drop body fat, you're gonna be hungry. Calorie dense foods are going to be tastier. The longer that goes on, the more this is going to be amplified. And if you just see something there and it's, ooh, I haven't had that for a while, I really want this, I would really urge you to be careful with that, because it's going to be really hard to moderate and not have it more than what you need. And again, just understand now you're using a chunk of your calories for the day towards something that is probably going to make you hungrier and is not going to satisfy you. So again, really avoid that grazing, or you'll just have one. Again, this goes back to the hunger, being okay with some hunger, right? Again, we need to sit with that. And that's a good skill to learn how to develop as well too in today's world. So those are my 8 lessons from my 2023 fat loss phase. I'm not sure when I'm going to do my next one. Right now, I'm sitting around 163, 165, and just eating. I'm not tracking right now. I'm just eating 4 meals a day, making sure it's built around source of protein. 2 of those meals are the same every day. And just monitoring my body weight, making sure I'm not seeing things trend down and it's not trending up too quickly. And then I make adjustments from there, and enjoying meals out with Allie, enjoying wine probably about once a week, a couple glasses a week, once a week. And so that's where I'm at now. And then with our baby coming here in September, I'm likely not going to do any cutting before then, not going to do any cutting during that time. So my next cut will probably be maybe sometime in 2025. And again, it's not going to be anything crazy where I'm going to try to get super shredded or anything like that. But that's it on my end. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this episode. If you're someone who is looking to do a fat loss phase and you're not sure on how to set it up, again, this is what my 30-minute strategy call is for. We talk about your goals, where you want to go, and we come up with a game plan to make sure that you get there. So if you're interested in that, the link to that is in the show notes. That's it for this episode, and I'll chat with you next time.